Hi everyone, so this will hopefully be a short video just how I've built the light panels that have been designed by Akyelle. My apologies because I am almost certainly saying that wrong. These are a Nano Leaf replica, so obviously all DIY. So in terms of each module, what I've been using, obviously you've got the printed parts, so you've got the base piece, the lens, some connectors, the sort of standard ones that you'd normally find on the strips of LEDs. Some I've already cut them, but strips of the said LEDs. These are your basic WS2812Bs, I think. So pretty much bog standard, and then some just wire just to connect between each segment of the LEDs. The thing with this one is all I've got here is a 4 connector or 4 cable. The problem I've had is trying to find just one that was like these, so just a 3 wire types connector. They do exist, I mean they are available, but it was actually cheaper to buy this 4-way one and then just basically discard one of the wires. So yeah, annoying, but it seemed to be about the only way that I could actually get this at a reasonable cost anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do on these ones is I'm literally just going to strip off the red connector. Arbitrary, well, there's no reason why it has to be that one, it could be the black one on the other side. I just don't know why, I just prefer having the black one signifying the reference lines or the ground line or negative, however you want to call it. It also means that the whole thing is a little bit darker, so the diffusers are quite good, but it just means you're less likely to see the cable on the inside. So let's get that out of the way and start with our LED strips. So all I'm going to do on these to begin with is just tin all the pads at the ends. This one's actually already done because it's one of the, obviously where they've got the run of it, I think they're about maximum of about 1 meter long, and then obviously you've got the 2 meter lengths being connected, and then they pre-solder them. So I've probably done it the wrong way, I just cut through it, but it's worked for me so far. Probably won't now, probably broken it, because that's just the way my luck goes. So we will just very quickly pop some solder on all of these pads. This is definitely going to be one of the ones where, now that I'm recording it and there's now a record of everything going on, something will go wrong. Because like I say, my luck runs that way. I'm also getting my fingers a little bit dangerously close there, but so what I am going to do here, because I don't know how old this is, so I'm just going to tap them with just a little bit of new solder just to reflow it all. So hopefully, there we go, so that's all of them done. So once that's done, and Joe, obviously you've got the adhesive on the underside. So once that's done, move them out of the way, and I'm just going to bring the base part of the frame in. So the way that I connected these, and I'm actually just going to check on the one up here to make sure I'm wiring it the same way. Yeah, okay, so the way that I've wired these up, you've got the 3 parts to the triangle, there's a surprise, and the way that I've actually done it is so that the negative is on the inside edge of all of them. So let's start by getting the adhesive backing off. This is where I desperately hope everything is actually in shot. I've left the autofocus on, so hopefully it should just zoom in and out, but hopefully it won't sort of jump back and forth and be annoying. So all I'm doing here is just very roughly lining up, because I've got the 4 LEDs in each strip, so the central point, so the middle connector, trying to line it up in the center of the edge here, and also trying to keep it in the middle of the support there. And then we'll do the same for the others. So again, let's just get that off. Ooh, come here. Go. And same again on this one. So again, lining up roughly in the middle. I say roughly, the diffuser is actually reasonably good at dealing with any sort of off-centeredness, not even a word, but it just means that it diffuses the light enough that you wouldn't notice if they're just ever so slightly off-center. To be honest, I think it diffuses it enough it wouldn't matter if it was completely off-center, but trying to keep it sort of in the middle. Okay, so now that this is done, my next part of it all is to get our 3 from 4 wire to start stripping the ends off of that, and I'm just between 2 of the corners going to connect them together, and then the third one is where we will then wire off from our connectors here. So the way I like to do this, I've got a pair of wire cutters with the strippers in the back end. They're not fantastic. This one is actually broken. The back's broken down here, which means it can be a bit of a rough bit, but when I'm doing 3 next to each other like this, it does make it just a little bit easier. So while they're actually connected, or still connected, I'm just going to grab my little... Sorry for the noise, there we go. So all I'm going to do here, I just need something to hold the cable in place with. And then all I'm going to do, hopefully, before I fray the ends too much, is just get my solder and soldering iron rather, and just dab that onto the ends, just to tin the ends of these, keep all the cables together. Just a squidge more there. There we go. So once I've done that, obviously with the inner edges now all being the negative rail, and we want to keep the black one there. So the way that I've actually got these going is soldering them on one side and then effectively running them as a bit of a hoop to get them to circle round and end up there. It also helps, I found, to keep the cable up in the corner here so it doesn't actually obscure anything. I know some of the other ones, they've done it where they've gone right up into the corners. It does give a slightly more even view in the diffuser. On my version, there are, when there's a reasonable amount of light in the room, you can see sort of darker corners. When it's much darker, it's actually not too bad. But yeah, I didn't do it because, if I'm perfectly honest, it's because I'm being lazy and I didn't want to have to do all of these wires to go up to the corner, back down again, and then on all of the others. So yeah, this is just me being lazy more than anything else. So let's pop that back in and then roughly get an idea of how long it needs to be. So about that long. Again, cut them off. Strip the ends down. And again, I'm just going to pop this in. This here is a wonderful little tool, completely 3D printed. I don't know, can't even remember where it was from. I think it was from Thingiverse. But I didn't have a small clamp to be able to hold circuit boards in and things like that. So I saw this and it's been absolutely brilliant. It flows really well. I did put some silicone spray on these. No, sorry, not silicone spray. It was dry PTFE spray on these just to help and make sure that it did actually flow properly. But yeah, really works well. The end pieces here are actually flexible filament, so the green bits on the end of it all. Anyway, back to what we were on about. I'm digressing here. So the easiest way I found, now that all this is pre-tinned, is just on the back of my soldering iron. Now this is going to be really awkward because I've not done it with the camera in the way before, so I'm just going to split the ends very slightly just so that I can splay the outer 2 wires off. Actually, it's on both ends. Just makes it a little bit easier because unfortunately these are a bit closer together than the ends of the LEDs are. So let's get that in there. So again, keeping the black wire to the middle
And I apologise if you can see the top of my head here. I need to crouch a little bit so I can see.
Of course. Oh, no, it's on. Another DIY thing here. Works really well, just turns itself off if it's not been used for a short period of time. And that could be a bit annoying when you're trying to do fiddly work, because you put the soldering iron down, go and pick it up. Well, it doesn't feel like that long later and the thing's actually shut off. But if anyone wants me to talk about it, leave a comment and we can always have a look and see. So again, onto the other corner. And oh, let's get those popped down. And there we go. So that's that in place. So I'll do the same again. I won't make you sit through it, so we'll pause here and I'll come back once I've got this next one on. Right, so there we go. Tidy some bits up here. Okay, so next up, obviously we've got the last two connections here, which will be, there's a nice butchering of the English language there. These will be the connections in and out. Now the way that I've got these, I've got it so that the in is using the socket end and the out is using the plug end. At least I think that's the way they should be referred, because kind of they both, one goes in the other but also goes in, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're going to do this one for data in anyway, and this one for data out. So let us look at this. So bearing in mind the color coding here, red is positive, green is data, and white is ground. So I need to make sure I spun that around. So again, let's get this into here. So on this one, to be honest, the markings on these LEDs that I've got here are not particularly good. You've got DI on that one and DI here. So really helpfully, both of them are being labeled as data input. Thankfully, they have also thought to put an arrow for the actual data in. So thankfully, that means that we know exactly where the data is going in, and that is actually right. I know that now because I've obviously tested them before I've done any of this, and I've part built the rest of the unit. So all I'm going to do here is nice and easy. These are pre-tinned already, these wires. So I'm literally just going to bring them in. Again, this is really awkward because I'm trying to make sure that you can see and the camera can see, but it means that I can't. Go, and lastly that fella in there. Whoops, come on, come on, come on, melt, melt, melt without touching everything else, please. There we go. That is terrible. Shh, don't tell anyone. So again, same on this side. So positive going on there. Green for data. In this instance, data out, even though the LED strip says data in, and that did not go on well. There we go. And lastly, that one there. Brilliant. Okay. So that's that done. That's our soldering done. Now, one of the things I have sort of found with these, obviously these cables are quite long. Let's move that back so we can actually see it. And one of the sort of the minor issues I found with it is with this particular design is there's nowhere to put the excess, but you do sometimes need these longer cables in order for it to actually reach between the LEDs or between the modules. The other problem that you've got is sometimes the way that the cables want to come across. Again, it's another reason why I didn't want to take these LEDs too far down, because you've got the two connections coming across here. So if you get any of these wires sticking up, you'll actually see the shadow on the diffuser at the front of it. So that's just something to be aware of. At this moment in time, I'm going to leave it as it is here. So coming out the front, obviously these will come through the back of it. And then it's just a question of connecting this up onto the existing set of modules that I've already put together. So I'm going to try and make some room because I don't think I've got enough left on this tiny little workbench that I actually have. So I'll try and make some room and we'll come back to you. Right, I've had to switch recording because for some reason Samsung have the two lenses on. This is the S10e, but you've got the two cameras on it. But for some reason I couldn't zoom to the wide-angled view, so I'm now using open camera, is it, I think? So yeah, if there's any changes in the way that this looks, then that's probably why. Also, excuse the mess, I am the least tidiest person on the planet. Something my other half will probably attest to. So this is the current one. Obviously I've taken the diffusers off. So this is the bare thing. So as I was saying on here, you've got to kind of route the cables around. I've got this blanking one in the middle just to connect the two sort of sections, shall we say, together. Well, I want to try and do the new one that we've just made. I want this to go up at the top here. So I've got 4 coming down, blank one connected, and then these 2 that are next to each other on the left side. That's the plan. We'll see whether it works. Obviously the trouble is I have now literally run out of room on this thing, so I don't actually have anywhere to put that in. Now, just a couple of quick things on this particular design that are kind of a bit of a gotcha for me. One of the things that was included with this design, and it's a great idea, were some 3D printed nuts and bolts for it. Now they do work, they actually fit together really well. Trouble is on my printer, I've got a Prusa Mark III, the connection between the thread and the head of the bolt wasn't strong enough, so as soon as you try to tighten them up they just snapped off. So I've had to switch over to metal nuts and bolts to connect all of this together. And the other big one at the moment, which is a bit of an elephant in the room for me, is the first unit, which is actually this one, which connects to the microcontroller. With this one, excuse the absolutely awful wiring, but again, it's one of the minor things with this particular design. There are very few ways you can really sort of channel this without it getting caught around things or the shadows appearing. So I have tried to do things like this, but then it pops through and you get a shadow. So for the time being, because I'm not putting this actually on a wall at the moment, the cables just, any of these extra cables just stay loose on the back of it. So like I say, the elephant in the room, this particular one here. So on this one, I've just used a standard connector because of the way that I started with all of this. So it's just literally, it's not one of these sort of clip-on ones. It's just some pin headers soldered directly on and then some heat shrink to hold the thing securely all together. So I need to take this one off and then I can put this newer one in its place, or my way up, and then obviously the one I've just taken off can get put on to the end, so it's always the first one. So that's the only elephant in the room for me. It's just because of the way that I designed this originally. I was just testing it to begin with and kind of didn't change this. So yeah, there's my fault. It's nothing to do with the design itself in this regard. It's just that I've done that. So this always needs to be the one that's first in the line. So let me get this apart and then we can get everything else bolted together and try and figure out the best way to get these cables to run around. Okay, so that's all of that wired up. Now, like I say, this is where you can see some of the minor flaws. Probably the way that I'm doing it, I should really reduce the length of these connections down, or the wires. The problem is I wanted to keep them at full length, because one of the nice things about these sorts of lighting units is the fact that you can reconfigure them. So if I customize all the lengths to be specifically what I need for a given layout, that does mean that obviously I can't, it's going to be harder. It's not that I can't reconfigure them. It would just be harder to reconfigure them, just simply because I'd have to redo a lot of the cabling. So I wanted to try and keep it so it can be very modular. But yeah, it does mean that some of these wires are going to be a bit of a pain. So we'll see what we can do with that as we go forward. But that's the wiring done, I hope. And this will be where I find out that I've actually connected the data in and out the wrong way around, which wouldn't be the first time. So let me get my power and the controller, which I've popped over here. Now, just before I show you the controller, please be aware that I have literally just thrown this together so it can basically it's just carrier board for everything. But let me just show you what we've got here. It is a complete, it's just very rough at the moment. It's just offcuts of Vera board and things like that. So we've got the ESP, which obviously running the show. On this particular one, originally I was planning to write my own software for it, and actually firmware using the AT Mega and Arduino. This is actually running WLED. Has some advantages. You've got Wi-Fi access to it, so it's very easy to change, do anything you want within the confines of your Wi-Fi access. There's an app on the phone which actually works really well. It's got its own built-in web browser to control it, so you can control it from any web or any connected device on the network that's got a web browser. So brilliant for that. It is 3.3 volts. That's obviously the controller itself. So I've got a line level converter here, and over on this side I've got a standard little power regulator here. So I'm actually running it off of the only power supply I had that had enough capacity is actually an 18 volt one. So this is taking the 18 volts in, swapping it down to 5 volts on the underside here. Oh, that's terrible. But on the underside here we've got the 5 volts going into the unit. Obviously it regulates it down to 3 volts. That comes across, gets soldered over, and then we've got our line levels to convert the 3 volt to the 5 volt. So, and then that obviously gets pumped out the side here. So what I should be able to do, he says, so the color coding I've got here is blue is negative, so I need to make sure that connects up right. Yeah. So it's blue to white, because cleverly I used completely incompatible connections here, but there we go. Sorry, excuse the arm and the cable coming across. So if we plug this in, hopefully it doesn't all blow up. Okay, so it starts off with its original boot up patterning. Now obviously you can see here we've got most of them running. This one isn't running yet, and that's simply down to the fact that the software has yet to be told that this actually exists. So none of them realise there's more than 60 LEDs on this, so I need to tell it that there are another 12 LEDs at the end of this. So let's just do that quickly, and hopefully we should be able to see the change going on. So I've logged into the web interface for WLED here. So the thing we need to look at, and again, this is something I don't know if there's an easier way of doing this. So when it comes up and it starts, I'm actually using the effect Pride 2015, just like the way that it does sort of the color changing across it. It's also set to come up at very low brightness, so I don't overwhelm the power supply in case I've put too much brightness into it and I start sucking too much current through it. So technically it's up to 3 amps. I try to keep it below about 2, but I have put some heat sinks onto it, as you may have seen when we showed you it. So that does help dissipate. I mean, I can push it a bit harder, but it's technically 3 amps, so it should be able to do most of it. So with this here, what I need to do is, first off, if we go to the segment, so I've got all as one segment, and we've got start and stop LED. So if I do 120 and apply that, it didn't work. Actually, it's not even 120. What am I doing 120 for? I am an idiot. So it's an extra 12. Why did I think it was going to be that? So 72. Oh, of course. If we go here, I think it's this one. Yeah, so need to tell it initially that we do actually have this. So again, nice thing here, it could tells you sort of the power level that you're going to need for your LEDs. I've got the auto brightness limiter on, so I've set it for a maximum of 2.5 amps. So that way, hopefully, I don't overstress the power supply too much. So we've got 72 LEDs, save that one, go back, go to the segments, change that segment, it's up to 72, and click OK, and there we go. So we now have the additional LEDs sitting there. Now, I have done some favourites. So we've got a whole selection of different modes that I've done that are just things I quite like. Now, again, when you click on these and you activate them, if I load Nebula here, you can see that the last set, again, have not illuminated. So it doesn't automatically update your presets. So if you add more LEDs on, you're going to have to go through every single one of your LEDs, of your presets, and update the number of LEDs. Easy to do. You just go back to segments, change it to 72, apply that, meaning that you now get the LEDs coming on. Then go back to your favorites, click the little down arrow, overwrite them with state, and then save the changes. So that's it. That will now, if I click my off one and then go back to Nebula, you can see that obviously it's now loaded those additional 12 LEDs up. So I'll need to do that for every single one of these that I've set up. There's possibly a way to deal with that. I don't know. So if anyone does know if there's a way that you can go into all of them and just say, look, all of you, you've got 72 LEDs, go and play with them, then that would be fantastic. But as it stands at the moment, the only way I can really do it is, or the only way I know to do it is to go into it, go to the segments, update that, apply it, go back to the favorite, and then again, just override the settings. So at that point, it then goes to the next one. And that's about it, really. There's not an awful lot more to say about the LEDs. So what we'll do is we'll put the diffusers back on. I'll get it positioned somewhere where it's a little bit darker because the sun has literally just come out at this point. So we'll move somewhere where it's a bit darker so I can actually show what these look like with the diffusers on. So it turns out in my house there is very few places that are actually dark when the sun's out. So I've got a large cardboard box here and popped it into there, so enough shade that you can actually see what's going on. Now, one of the things that may be coming through on the video is up in the top here, there is the shadow of the LEDs. Now that's what I was saying about with these ones. Sorry, shadow of the wire, because of the way that some of the cables go. So it can be a little bit of a finagling effort to get things to line up so that they don't actually end up showing on the diffusers. So that's something I will deal with later. But other than that, obviously, as you can see here, this is what we just had at the beginning. So this is the one that starts with, so the Pride one. One of my favorites. I absolutely love this one. Completely impractical for just general room illumination because it's quite flashy. So just a side note on this one, I don't know how much this will affect anyone, but if you do suffer with any form of things like photosensitive epilepsy, may be best to skip forward for a minute. But it's the random fireworks. I absolutely love this one. It's just with the way that the LEDs actually work in this layout, you get this wonderful sort of spinning effect as it all sort of dissipates around, so making it look a bit more like sort of a there's actually more going on and more animation than there actually is. It's obviously, I mean, WLED sees this as one long strip of LEDs, so it doesn't see it any other way. So by having it like this, it does give this sort of spinning effect, which I think on this particular mode is really, really effective. with it all. Other ones that I've done as well for these, we've got just warm whites. So actually you can see I haven't updated my segments there, so let me just change that one over. 72, okay, and there we go. And we'll just update that as well. I've lost it, there it is. Overwrite and save. I've also got a cool white one that will load up. I've got several others of just sort of gently fading colours, again, just more for background illumination more than anything else. I'm not sure how well this is coming through on the camera, but down in the bottom right, this one just at the bottom here is a little bit dimmer to my eye. Possibly the voltage is dropping because obviously it's coming from here and it's got to get all the way around to there. So again, another sort of problem with having all the LEDs in one continuous length is that the power has to go through the entire length. So any voltage drop that's going along this will mean that the ones at the end of the line may not be getting the right amount of voltage, so they will get a bit dimmer. So that's one thing to bear in mind. You might need to have additional distribution of the 5-volt line going along it. So yeah, that's pretty much the way that I've done this. It's probably dragged on way too long. So if you have got to the end, thank you very much for watching. Ultimately, my next thing is to get the electronics sorted out so they're a little bit neater and mount it onto the unit. One thing I want to see about doing here is actually this connecting one, which is hollow, is actually to make my own version of it so that actually it's not hollow and there's a space. It still have a recess at this point, but there'll be a space at the back to basically put all the electronics so it's all hidden away. So you just get the light coming out of the front of it all, and no, aside from the power cable, no other cables looking or visible from the front of the unit. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.